It can be useful if you take it back to the way it used to be, and it has a proud history because it did contribute to these. But there's one other thing that I noticed in all of this, and it came to me while I was writing this, and so I redirected the way I was writing it. I had at first just thought about writing what the commission did and blah, 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 dee, dee, doo, 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 the commission did, blah, blah, blah. And I was in New York in 2006 when Sean Bell got shot and killed. And the commission had done these hearings when Diallo got killed in New York. And I was chair in the 90s. And Giuliani and I had the biggest tussle you've ever seen in your life, because he was subpoenaed, he didn't like it, and all the police and brass. And he called me everything but a child of God in the New York Post and every place else he could find. But we had recommended some changes in the New York Police Department and how they operated so that they wouldn't be going around shooting people when they shouldn't be shooting them. And they had screamed and yelled and cried about how they weren't going to do what we said and blah, 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 blah. But then after the dust settled, they did it. And they made some changes. But then when Sean Bell got shot, I said they must not have made all the changes, or they must have backslid on some of the stuff they were doing with the community, because this just doesn't make any sense. So I said, wait a minute, the commission hasn't held any hearings since I left. Those people who are running it, those Bush people, they haven't had any hearings to have ordinary people come in to tell them what their problems are and to try to figure out what to do about them since we left. Because all we did all the time, and the main thing the commission was set up to do, was to have hearings where you could subpoena officials, have other people, and then at the end you always let anybody who had anything they wanted to say about anything come in and complain about whatever it was, and stay there all night if you needed to. And most of what you did, you heard all kinds of things from people, ordinary people. It was to listen to people that nobody else would listen to. It would be people who had come to you, and I thought about this guy named Theodis Krabs, who I talk about in the book, who in the late 1950s was driving down the road in Alabama and on the way home from work at night with his buddy, and was pulled over by the police. This happened a lot in the South in those days. And he was a Korean War veteran. He was there, they were coming back from work. And they pulled him over and asked him to get out of the car, and he got out, and the guy said, stand up. And he stood there and just, don't look at me. And he stood there, and the guy shot him in the back. And then he was laying down on the side of the highway, and his buddy tried to get out to help him. He said, if you get out, I'll shoot you. And he didn't get out. And then Theodis looked up and said, man, you know, why did you shoot me? And he said, shut up, nigga, and shot him again. And he was left there paralyzed on the side of the road. And they left. And then his buddy got him and went home. And Theodis Krabs, the way I came upon him was I was looking in the files, and there was this guy who was denied a veteran's pension. And I started reading his story. He had a disability from the war. And when he wrote in and asked them to increase his pension, because he was paralyzed from the waist down now, and he was in a wheelchair, they wrote back and said, we're going to take your pension away from you altogether because you were involved with the police. Now, he was involved with the police because the police shot him in the back, okay? And he had been everywhere, asking everybody to help him, and nobody would help him. And finally, one of the lawyers at the commission happened to be strolling around in Alabama and heard about the story from a minister and investigated. And the commission took up Theodis Krabs' case and ended up ultimately getting his pension back, okay? And had the Justice Department prosecute the police officer, who was the police chief of the little town. But he got off because that was the day, right? But he got his pension back. And I thought to myself, now the most important thing about the commission is not all those commissioners and what they did, it's the people who they listened to. And I thought how sad it is that in the 21st century we had Katrina. And if I'd been at the commission, I would have taken a hearing down there to find out how much was race, how much was just negligence, how much was what. Nobody's ever done any investigation yet for all those, I'm going to New Orleans in the morning, by the way, for all those people who are concerned. All these issues that have come up. When Sean Bell got shot, they should have been right there trying to figure out what went wrong since Diallo that makes all this stuff, you know, keep on happening. But they didn't do a thing. They weren't doing anything. So what they did was stop listening to people. Stop listening to people. In 1999, the Indians in South Dakota had a whole bunch of Indian men shot mysteriously on the way home to the reservation at night and left on the side of the road dead. And nobody knew who shot them or what happened to them or whatever. And it was suspected that they had been over the line to Nebraska to buy something to drink because you couldn't drink on the res. And somebody or other just decided to shoot them on the way back. Whole bunch of them shot. Other people harassed in town. And they asked the FBI, they asked every police, whatever, to try to find out. And nobody would even talk to them, the Indians. We went out there. And when we went out there, the FBI came, all the people came to explain themselves. And the Indian people came from all over South Dakota, North Dakota, all of North. They came in cars and pickup trucks and hanging on to things and camped out at the place where we were having the hearing, all around the place. So they could be there, so they could see somebody get these government people to come up and say something, and that they could come and tell their story, including the people who came and talked about their son, little kid who was disabled, who was picked up and thrown into a garbage can by some white kids, and who held him down until he suffocated and died for no reason at all. And all of this stuff that happened. So I thought, it's about the people. It's about listening to the people. And so what I did is I refocused the book to talk, yes, about the commissioners and yes, about the presidents and the fights that they had, but I went out first to find photographs of all the people I could find who had come, whose stories I tell in the book about why they came and whatever. And I'll give you the last thing. And so those photographs, there are 93 photographs in the book, I'll tell you how hard it was to find some of them. The Otis crimes. I said, I want the man's picture. I want to put his picture in the book. How am I going to find his picture from this little town? So I did what I always do, what I did with Callie House's story. I started looking up everybody named Crimes in the state of Alabama first, C-R-Y-M-E-S. And I found all these people, and then I started calling people. And finally I found some people who sounded to me like they should be related, but they would ask me who I was, and I would just say, I'm looking for, you know, something about, and they would hang up on me. And I said, why are all these people hanging up on me? And then one day a kid answered the phone at one of the houses, and I said, do you know who Theodis Crimes was? And he started to tell me that he knew, and somebody grabbed the phone away from him and hung up. So I said, how am I going to find it? So I finally went to the library in that little town. And they said, well, we have a black woman who's a retired teacher who is here. Maybe she knows some of these people. And I talked to her. She knew who I was. And she said, I'll go talk to them and tell them it's okay to talk to you. So she went and she talked to some of these people. And she came back and she said, you know what? I said, what? They thought you were a bill collector. So finally, I found the family, and then I found the one sister who, like, I understand that because it happens to my family. She was the one that had all the old pictures under her bed. See, nobody else had the old pictures. They said, oh, say, you got to talk to, she got the old pictures under her bed. And I finally found her in this little town. And she was retired and has lung disease from working in the coal mines, the mines down there. And I finally had to beg and plead and cajole, and I had to send FedEx and have them wait and get it out from under bed. And there's only one picture of Theodis Crimes in the whole world, and it's one after at the time that he died. But I said to the family, "Did you know the story? These are his children who are grown now." No. No one ever told them how their father got paralyzed. They just knew he was paralyzed and something bad had happened to him. And they said he was always mellow. He learned how to fix radios and little appliances on a little table. And I finally figured out why they didn't tell him. The old teacher told me, the woman at the school. They didn't want them to get upset and go out and try to do something about it because they would get killed. So their mama just didn't tell them. She just said, oh, don't worry about it. we're going to do whatever we have to do. And they never told it. So when I told them, I said, your father was a hero. You should know his story.